is KIC Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the South Bank podcast. I'm your host today, Cameron Gorman, and I am joined by Jacob Jones. Jacob, how are you feeling after Wolves have finally won a game? I've completely forgotten this feeling.
Yeah, we're back with a bang. The podcast is back this week. We did plan to return last week, but for obviously reasons out of everyone's control, we didn't. But what a way to come back. Wolves have won a match, albeit not in the Premier League, but we do take it. What was dubbed as going to be one of the worst matches we were going to go to ended up being quite a memorable night in the end.
Yeah, most definitely. A 3-2 thriller in the end. However, the whole game is kind of flattered by the scoreline, I have to say, personally. It wasn't the best game in the first half, to put it absolutely mildly. Both teams going into this game in absolutely torrid form, both of us getting battered each week. As Jacob alluded to, I can't say the names that people were calling this match heading into it, but rubbish versus rubbish is how I'll put it. The team selection itself, I found rather interesting, giving a lot of players who haven't necessarily had minutes yet in the Premier League a chance, and allowing us to see some flexibility amongst that back line with different options being shown, which I think has left fans with a lot to discuss, which we'll get into later. But before the teams even kicked off, there was a big piece of news regarding Wolves and all their home fixtures this season. A new walkout song replacing Hi Ho Silver Lining. I've seen mixed discussions online. Fosun claimed to have come to this decision due to discussions with several fan groups, such as the Old Gold Pack and the 1877 Club. However, mixed reviews online, Jacob, and I know that you are also on that wavelength. What were your thoughts?
I never wanted to see Hi Ho Wolverhampton go. I had this conversation with a fan on Finalysis just last week. Actually, I think I understand, and the sentiment is nice. Obviously, for those who don't know, Fields of Gold by Sting was Diogo Jota's favourite song. That's why it was played during the beautiful Jota tribute against Manchester City. But I feel like it would have been better suited in the warm up, like similar to how we play Wonder of You for Sir Jack Haywood in the warm up before Hi Ho Silver Lining comes on. I understand people's thinking of a lot of other teams have Hi Ho Silver Lining now. It's not specific to Wolverhampton Wanderers. They want to have an anthem similar to You'll Never Walk Alone at Liverpool or something along them lines, but it's never going to catch on to that level, I don't think. Me personally, I think the idea probably sounded better than the execution to these fans that voted for it to be the walkout song. There's not enough of a oomph behind the song, as great as it is, to get fans riled up for the game. I think that ultimately, I would be surprised if in a couple of months you see the decision reversed and Hi Ho Wolverhampton being back in front of the games.
I completely agree. I understand the sentiment and where it's coming from a good place. However, I'm not sure it's quite great. As you mentioned, the atmosphere can suffer slightly. I don't feel like it necessarily as an anthem matches us as a club. I feel like we're very passionate, gritty, and determined as a fan base, despite how the team has evolved over the years. And I feel Hi Ho Silver Lining, it instills that passion into the ground and injects it into the match right from the get-go. Gets everyone in a good mood, like you're hearing like the come on and the chants are starting to flow, but the atmosphere feels a lot more morbid with Fields of Gold, in my opinion, and I fear that the atmosphere is where it's going to greatly suffer. For example, I'm not sure if you were in your seat by this point, Jacob, as many people were in the concourse, but when they did play Hi Ho Silver Lining, the crowd was jumping up and singing along as they always do, expecting the teams to be walking out. But obviously, a lot of people were unaware of this decision. Even arriving at the game, they may not have been on their phones during work, for example. And it was quite confusing to a lot of people. And the ground's atmosphere fell completely silent upon Fields of Gold. Obviously, people, A, not knowing the words, and B, it being a relatively new decision, you compared it to You'll Never Walk Alone, and while I understand that's what the club are going for, it doesn't quite have the same historical significance, does it?
No, exactly. That's exactly the point.
But to get into the actual game itself, which we are actually for once very excited to get into, let's first talk about the team selection. We saw a back line of Santiago Bueno, Emmanuel Agbadou, and Yerson Mosquera making a long-awaited return to the side after his injury problems. Sam Johnstone in goal. We had Rodrigo Gomez at the right wing-back role and Hugo Bueno on the left. Andre and Bellegarde in midfield. Interestingly, a contrast to what was the weekend at Bournemouth with João Gomez starting with Bellegarde. And then Arias, Wang as captain, nevertheless, and Fer Lopez up top to complete the starting 11. Now, I personally was excited to see minutes given to players like Arias and Fer Lopez, who necessarily haven't had time on the ball in the league, or the minutes given to them in Fer Lopez's case. Rodrigo Gomez is a player I always have time for, and you listeners of the podcast will know just how much we love him over here. But what I found quite interesting, obviously, while he's the longest serving player on the pitch, Wang as captain, what were your thoughts on this, Jacob?
I think context is key. At the time, it was very surprising, but it was almost a reward for Huang. In fairness, I have a lot to say about his performance, but for being very brave this week in losing his grandfather and
Yeah.
sticking with the team to quote unquote help the team, whether he did or didn't is another question. But it was a nice touch from Vitor Pereira. I think Juan has shown this bravery, this commitment to the team here, and he was made captain for it. So ultimately, I think, yeah, fair decision at the end of the day.
I have to agree. And even though I feel like he might not be the most vocal on the pitch, we can't argue that he is a leader in that dressing room for the way other players look to him and respect him. But getting into the actual match itself, honestly, that first half,
Oh my God.
for the first, wow, so boring. That in that first 20 minutes, the only chance that had happened in that game was a wide shot by Bowen, for which he was offside in that whole first 20 minutes. Apart from that, it was just centre halves playing football, really, that first half, wasn't it, mostly? Paqueta and Bowen had a little link up during the West Ham passage of play, which John Stone produced a great save. He also produced another great save when Bowen was through on goal one-on-one. I was very impressed with him for those shot stops, as he had to be quite quick off his line. But Wolves' first shot on target came in the 28th minute with Jean Arias getting his first shot on target as a Wolves player. That's about as much as I can say for it. It was a curling shot just straight into the arms of Areola. West Ham shot for a pen in the 35th minute, but not given. And apart from that, it was just very morbid. I personally put in my notes while watching the game, this ref stinks in all capitals, because I was getting quite annoyed at the lack of fouls he was giving towards us. I'm not sure if you thought the same thing, Jacob.
Not particularly lack of fouls towards us, but soft ones against us was more my
Yeah, probably a better
frustration.
way of putting it.
I remember one specifically, Santi, Bueno, and Agbadou were battling with it in the box, and then Santi simply goes out to press the ball after losing it, and the West Ham player throws himself on the floor without Santi even touching him in front of the North Bank, and he blew up. And there was just so many like that, and it
Yeah,
was really frustrating. But as for the first half an hour or so, wow. I remember turning around to my dad around the 20-minute mark and saying, wow, we've only been here 20 minutes. Because my life, it seemed like a pre-season game all over again.
yeah,
You definitely tell why both teams were down there, both struggling to create anything. I remember Thomas Soucek having a decent chance at the start, which you mentioned Johnson made a good save from. Um, but aside from that, I thought Mosquera looked quite good in his opening stages, a few decent drives forward. Hugo Bueno, I thought was brilliant all night.
yeah.
And Lopez was the one that was picking up the ball and finding pockets of space. Although my only guy with Lopez, I think he needs to be a bit more confident. when he's at
I
the edge of
agree.
the box. He's got a wicked left foot on him, as he's shown in the second half. But each one of them, have a go at one point. What's the worst that's going to happen when you're around that edge of the box? Is my only gripe with Fer Lopez in that open half an hour, really.
I have to agree. I think Fer Lopez is a player. Obviously, we can see he has tremendous technical ability, and undoubtedly that plays into how great his potential is as a player and why Wolves have put such an investment into the player. Um, I have to agree, though, he's always looking for the pass out wide in those positions instead of shooting. Obviously, being in the North Bank behind the goal, I could see he had a few opportunities where the defenders actually did give him the space. I understand he had his man closing him down, and he doesn't seem necessarily at the moment physically strong enough to deal with the players who are backing into him from behind. His balance is quite light, probably due to his frame, but can't really blame him. He's a young lad, still got time to adjust to this, so I'm sure we'll see some of it. But like you said, Hugo Bueno, I'll get more into him in the second half, but what a difference he makes to the side. Obviously, more experience in English football compared to David Moller-Wolf, but I think he's fantastic all night. Hugo Bueno, putting in some excellent crosses and some great link-up play. Um, my only pet peeve for him, there were a couple times he played himself into trouble. However, I feel like that's actually very normal for a fullback. I'm just too used to watching Ryan Ait-Nouri, who can Cruyff turn his way out of trouble. But like you said, I was also impressed with Yerson Mosquera. I thought the defence as a whole looked a lot more confident having him in that back line. His strength was scaring the West Ham attackers, quite frankly, and his drives were very positive. And even the unsuccessful passes in which he played, he really had great ideas. There were a couple of times he hit crosses like way out of the pitch in the second half as well, but he had very good ideas in how he wanted to orchestrate the team, which I like to see. But the last thing we need to get onto in this first half was our, well, undoubtedly the most important. Wolves got a penalty. So we don't have to wait a whole season this year. We've actually got one quite early on, despite not having one last season. And Bellegarde was the player to win the penalty. He's one-on-one with the defender in the box. Um, defender's not sure which way he's about to go. I was wondering personally at the time why he hadn't played it to the edge. There were a couple man unmarked, but in the end, Bellegarde made the correct decision and gets chopped down in the box and earns Wolves a penalty. Jacob, what were your thoughts on the initial challenge?
Yeah, it's a Stonewall penalty, isn't it? I think quick feet from Bellegarde. Ali asked us well to feed it through to him initially. Yeah, Stonewall penalty. It was just when I saw Hwang Hee-chan pick up the ball, I wasn't really filled with confidence. We see his penalty record at Wolves has been quite torrid, to say the least. And last night was, well, I'll let you explain what last night was.
Yep, Hwang, as Jacob mentioned, not a great penalty taker. I may be wrong on this, but I'm 99% sure I'm not. I'm pretty sure he's missed every penny he's taken for
I think
us.
he scored one in the league a few years ago
Yeah, it might be.
against Leeds or something.
However, what comes to mind for me is his awful one against Preston, which he dragged
Yeah.
so weakly. His one against Stoke in pre-season recently, which he missed, and this one, which he also missed, despite sending Areola the wrong way. And it looked to be good power on the finish as well. He strikes the post and it rebounds, thankfully, to the onrushing Rodrigo Gomez's right foot. And he manages to hit it in as Areola's rising. He gets a hand to it, but he can't stop it going in. And thankfully, Wolves are 1-0 ahead, with Rodrigo Gomez getting the club's first official competitive goal for this season. Jacob, how happy were you to see that man score a goal with his undoubted passion?
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's a great follow-up, really. I know it seems simple at the time, but he's running onto it with some pace. It's the first time finish right into that corner. As for the penalty itself, I think it's not a horrid one in the way of a Preston or a Stoke penalty was. I
I
think
agree.
Hwang hits it well, and he's a lick of paint away from scoring. But thankfully, Rodrigo Gomez was there to follow up and finish. But just a little bit of potentially a hot take while on Rodrigo Gomez. I think he struggled a bit last night. I don't think it was one of his better games. I think, particularly when we get on to West Ham's equaliser, I have a lot of stuff to say about Rodrigo. And I've been vocal, to be fair, it's not his fault. in the fact of I don't think he's a wing back. I see him as a winger, not a wing
I
back. I
agree.
think he struggles in that wing back role sometimes, especially defensively, which is what he got caught out on for the West Ham equaliser in the second half.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the second half now. Obviously, West Ham did not have to wait long to find their equaliser in this game. First real attack of the half that was looking threatening. In the 49th minute, their first shot on target in that half. Um, a Bowen cutback is blocked by Santi, who I thought did very well last night. Um, all game, in fact, to get on the right side of these players who were trying to cross into the box, and he made a lot of really good last-ditch tackles personally, and I was very impressed by both of the Buenos. Um, but yeah, it gets played to the edge of the box where a fantastic cross is whipped in, and we all know who's lurking at the back post when West Ham are putting in those kind of crosses. It's that huge Czech Thomas Souček, and he headers home. He's never going to make a mistake from there. Doesn't have to jump with his sheer height, and just smashes that header into the net. Jacob, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I have to preface it by saying it's an absolutely unbelievable cross by Bowen to
Completely agree.
find Souček initially, but Rodrigo Gomez shouldn't be marking Thomas Souček for
Yeah,
start. That should not be happening. Although it's from very close range, I think Johnson needs to have a lot stronger hands here.
completely
And I
agree.
think that's the case for both goals. I think Johnson's poor for both of them, but we know that he's just gash. So we expect nothing less from that guy. I think more so for the second goal, the defence just isn't organised, even for this one. The second goal's criminal when I watched it back, actually. We'll get onto that in a bit, especially from one man in that back line. But yeah, a good goal from West Ham's point of view because an unbelievable cross. But um, yeah, just plain and simple. If you've got Rodrigo Gomez marking Thomas Souček, the inevitable's going to happen, I think, is the bottom line.
Yeah, it's like David v Goliath in that box, really. Shouldn't be the case for the marking. However, I can understand why it happened, but not to excuse it happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, Wolves did proceed to pile on the pressure following this goal. Arias earned the corner. Bellegarde fired a shot quite over the bar, but apart from that, it was just quite a lot of corners, quite a lot of crosses, but nothing really coming from it for Wolves. Um, there was a short corner that posed some threat with the header flying across goal, but no one managing to tap it home. And they upped their tempo generally, but made chances. But however, it wouldn't be Wolves who score next in the 62nd minute. West Ham score in what I would say is completely against the run of play up to that point following the West Ham goal. And I'm not sure if Wolves just switch off. As Jacob alluded to, certain players did more so than others, which we'll get to in a second. But another Bowen cross in and onto the head of Paqueta. And again, a great header, but you can't miss. Defender is wrong-sided, and it's quite poor goal to concede, in my opinion, Jacob. But I'll let you get into the explanation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, we're here talking about another Emmanuel Agbadou mistake. I think he completely leaves his man unmarked in the box. I thought Agbadou didn't have a bad game last night, but this was really poor to
Yeah,
leave Paqueta unmarked. Like I say, Johnson probably again should be getting lower to it faster, but it's a header from point blank range. Um, Maybe you could say, even though he had a great game, Hugo Bueno shouldn't be letting the same cross come in again from that side
I agree.
for his goal. But ultimately, Emmanuel Agbadou should not be leaving a man unmarked in the box like that, unopposed. It's the easiest header Paqueta's ever going to get to in his life. But you mentioned against Fulham play, yeah, I think I mentioned to my dad merely minutes before, but we'd responded quite well to the goal. We'd
Yeah,
Bellegarde had a bit of a half chance on the edge of the box. Um, Rodrigo Gomez was trying to get forward, and we were just starting to see a bit of something coming together. But ultimately, the second goal probably inevitably helped us because the big guns came on, and well, I'll get onto it in a minute. There's something that really impressed me about when I saw these players come on, which gives me more hope for this season.
yeah. I think you're thinking of exactly the same thing I am. Um, Yeah, like you say, I was quite disappointed in Bueno not to allow these crosses. However, he is also against arguably one of the better wingers in the league.
Definitely.
So I think it's unfair to judge him too harshly. But namely on Agbadu, like you said, at fault for the mistake. I think generally he had a much better game
Yeah.
yesterday. Obviously, still a shadow of himself from last season, the monster he was then coming into our back line. But he was making a lot of careless mistakes, I would say, in these first two fixtures of the season, namely due to lack of confidence, in my opinion. However, he certainly looked a lot more confident with the defenders he had alongside him yesterday. I thought Santi Bueno had a great game. I was really impressed by him and how much determination he was showing to make some of the tackles he did. And ultimately, while Yerson Mosquera's minutes did have to be managed, I thought he put in a very impressive cameo for the time he was on the pitch. But like you say, that luckily for us wasn't the end of the game, while West Ham might have wanted it to be. In the 70th minute, Wolves make some substitutions, mainly Jorgen Strand Larsen and João Gomez entering the field. But that was certainly a masterstroke from Vitor Pereira. At least by me, all the people we were crying out for the substitutions, what saying something needs to change. Is he watching the same game? He certainly was, because he made the ones we were all alluding to. And Jackson Chachachua making his Molineux debut. Much adored by the home fans. Standing ovation just upon entry to the field. Likely due to his amazing cameo against Bournemouth, in which I thought he changed the game in that match against 10 men. And his pace, wow, causes so many problems. It's like having a Dharma back at right wing back almost. But except this guy can actually defend. But he still has a Dharma shooting, as we saw with a very late chance that he did have. But let's just talk about Jackson for a moment before we get on to how these substitutions affected the game positively. What a player. Personally, I am already in love with this man. And I feel he's made such a notable difference to how expansive our football has become.
Yeah, well, I now have nothing to say because you took the Adama Traore comparison right out of my mouth. I was immediately going to make it. I made it on the radio last night on BBC WM, but I say it's so good just to have an out ball. It completely changed the way we play. We finally had, when Gomez and Andre came onto the ball, they finally had an out ball to play. That Juve, who West Ham have signed, had an absolute nightmare with him on that side. You know, who another hot take for me. I don't think he's as good as people think. This Chief, I think I didn't rate him that much against Chelsea defensively. I didn't rate him last night defensively. I think he really struggles. But we're not a West Ham podcast. Jackson Chapchua, fantastic, and what a ball for that
Yeah,
Stralhausen winner. I also want to say that obviously Gomez did very well coming on last, did very well come on, and you could see the quality improvement because it made players like Alias look a lot better when he had better players around him. He finally
absolutely.
started to find them pockets. I mean, there's for the lead up to the third goal, that 1-2 that Alias plays with Larson
Oh, it
and
was
the end
brilliant.
about there. It was fantastic. But yeah, and what I was alluding to is the fact that when we brought our big guns on, we looked head and shoulders above West Ham. Is
Mhm.
what gives me a bit of confidence moving forward into this season. They couldn't live with us only for a short period of time, and if we're that much drastically better than them when we have our start 11s on, that gives me a bit of confidence moving forward because the way it looked last night was like if we were to play them players the whole time, we'd have won 5 or 6 because we
Yeah.
were absolutely dominant in them closing stages. Aliola don't quite know what he was doing in that West Ham goal towards the end of the game. It seemed like the South Bank really got in his head and he just really started to struggle. I mean, the second goal initially looked like a really poor mistake where I was sitting, but when you watch the highlights back, there is a bit of a deflection, but I still
Yeah,
think
I think he actually didn't do that badly. I think he did
yeah,
quite well considering the deflection to stick his feet well enough to block it.
yeah.
But getting into that second goal, absolutely incredible finish from Jorgen Strand Larsen. obviously next to no time to react, and he manages to hit it top corner. Areola was up quite quickly, could have made the save. Had it just been a regular shot at goal, but an emphatic finish from the Norwegian, and Wolves were back in the game at 2-2. But thankfully, a big return for a big Austrian. And I am absolutely buzzing to talk about Sasha Kalajic. I thought he made a really impressive cameo yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think he's really showed that he earned his place in this team for this season. Many Wolves fans, we were impressed by his tribute against Man City to Diogo Jota, laying down his own shirt, which carries on the legacy of the number 18 in memoriam. And while touching, Wolves fans really do want the best for this guy. His wife even owns a restaurant in Tetnall, for those who didn't know, contributing not only to the club, but the local area, which I really admire from a player. And he just seems like a really genuine bloke who, despite having a nightmare start with back-to-back ACL injuries upon joining Wolves, he really already cares about this club and wants to pay it back to the fans for the time he's missed. I thought he made an incredible difference. I think, personally, in recent weeks, Strand Larsen has looked very isolated up top. The defenders seemingly know that with Jorgen on the field, he's the only player who can finish, and he draws all of the markers practically. So our crosses are just getting bounced back out the box, as I'm sure we've all become very aware of. But Sasha, not only did he have some great moments of hold-up play, some great moments of link-up to play through the likes of Hugo Bueno, Arias, and even Jorgen Strand Larsen upon occasion. I thought he did very well to drag away a lot of the markers from that defence. But Jacob, on to the Austrian. What were your thoughts on an exciting cameo, I thought, personally?
Yeah, a first competitive appearance for Sasha Kalajic in over 500 days, which is a crazy, crazy stat. But yeah, you think of players, some players just stand out and are a fan favourite, and Sasha Kalajic is that. Look, he's never going to be a world beater for Wolves. We don't expect that from him. But he came on. His hold-up play was fantastic, as he mentioned. The strength he showed, I mean, holding it in the corner a few times, a bit of housery from him there. We love to see that. And even his technical play, I thought looked great. Some flick-ons and
I agree.
whatnot. I mean, I think he did a ball at one point. I thought he's going to do his ACL again here, but he thankfully didn't. But even like, he's so happy for him because even in his post-match interview, he mentioned how tough of a time it's been, but how thankful he is to have his new baby child, to have this team around him to help come in. And he's just a player you want to succeed. And I think he's shown that he's got something to offer last night. I think in a brief cameo, looked a lot better than what Hwang Hee-chan did the whole game. So I think, yeah, and having two men up front, two men that you can cross the ball into as well. Wolves notoriously last season were very frustrating. The fact we didn't put any crosses into the box, but at the end of that game, we were firing them in, and we had two men in there who could attack them in Sasha and Strand Larsen. I just wish Sasha would have got at the end of one of them, but it will come if he carries on playing that hold up and knocking it down to the wing backs, especially when you've got players like Bueno and Chatchua who look like they can really whip in a ball. So it could be a great solution for goals for us. But yeah, Sasha has put himself in the window now with, I think, that Vitor will be able to see now I can trust this man to come on when need be. Whereas before he may have been a bit more tentative, with the lack of games that Sasha has played. He's proven that he can go up to this level and he can put in a shift when need be. Look, he's never going to be a starter for us this season. It's not going to happen. But
You never know.
well, depending on what way transfers go, he could be, but
Well,
you
I
don't
was
expect
thinking
him to be.
I was thinking personally, sorry to interrupt. Regardless, a lot of people online, and I wouldn't actually be against this. A lot of people calling for him to start on Saturday and start in that in a
Yeah.
5-2-1-2. I even if it's not Sasha, I don't think that it'd be the best idea due to his fitness personally. But I would like to definitely see him come off the bench. But more namely, I would like to see us play with two up top. I personally think we looked a lot better. It allowed the wing backs a lot more. As we have João Gomez and Andre, who are both able to cover them when needed, due to their high intelligence of the game also. But I think when allowed to go forward, knowing that they had Andre and João Gomez behind them in contrast to when Bellegarde was on the field, they looked far more confident surging forwards, and they were putting in excellent crosses, like you mentioned. And I just think we looked a lot more confident in attacking play in general, personally. But
Yeah.
that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think in the last 15, 20 minutes, we started to really open up West Ham, and that's why we got the third goal. What a brilliant goal, by the way. Like I mentioned, the 1-2 with Alias and Larson. And then, we finally got to that second ball, and we made something work with it. How long have we been waiting for that for a Wolves team? Um,
So,
But yeah, positives to take. And you know what? Even though it was a limited crowd last night, I thought the fans that did go created a great atmosphere, especially in that South Bank. Even when we were quite poor in the first half, they were still singing, and it was some atmosphere by the time we scored the third goal. Molyneux was truly rocking last night.
yeah. Reminiscent of times of old when that third goal went in. Absolute pandemonium at Molineux, limbs everywhere. And honestly, it's the type of moment Wolves fans have long awaited. I can't remember the last time we had a game at Molineux that was like that, a comeback win in a 3-2 manner, or that sort of scoreline. And I think it's a much needed boost going into our next game against Everton on Saturday, who have been in terrific form since the start of the season. Larson, let's not forget though, aside from these two goals, he could have had a hat trick,
Yeah.
a chance just grazing the crossbar that he had late on. Even in his post on social media post match, he was saying he feels he should have had a hat trick. You're getting a bit greedy, Jurgen. Just hope your wallet's not. Don't want to see you go to Newcastle, please, mate. Um, the game, however, did not have the potential to end 3-2. In the last minutes of the game, an excellent cross was put in as West Ham surged forward, Wolves fans praying for the final whistle. And as the minutes ticked over to the end of added time, Lucas Paqueta had a bicycle kick opportunity, which we were shocked to see connect behind the goal, but blocked off the line by Emmanuel Agbadou. Whether it was offside or not, I'm not 100% certain. It may have been, it may have not, but I thought Agbadou did brilliantly there to get across the goal. And upon clearing it, knowing that he'd practically secured the 3 points, he went balmy. He was showing so much passion to the North Bank and fist pumping like crazy. And it's good to see that sort of passion coming back to him. And I'm sure that would have given him a lot more confidence. But one thing I wanted to touch upon at the end of the match, which I found rather interesting, was the absolute disarray in that West Ham support. Um, there was Fulkrug and Jeroboam going over, apologising to the West Ham fans, trying to talk to them one to one and receiving torrents of abuse, which has become quite the pandemonium on social media. Although we aren't a West Ham podcast, so I won't get into it too much, but I did find it very interesting, and I'm sure many of you will too. But, Jacob, now that all's said and done, what were your thoughts on the match, and what are your main takeaways, most importantly, going into Everton on Saturday?
Well, I think we did very well to get 3 points in a cup tie, first of all, Cameron.
Oh
As
my
you...
gosh.
But yeah, no,
Wishful thinking.
it was a
Wishful thinking.
it was a great night. Just hopefully that's the kick on we need. A bit of positivity in the camp, that bit of a feel good back. And look, going into Everton, Everton looked good on the weekend against Brighton. They did.
Oh,
But I think context is key. It was their first game, their new ground, the atmosphere was up. But they're a good side, Everton. They do have some real quality players. Jack Grealish looks back to his old self, where he's able to run at players now, which, my God, thank God we don't have Keanu Hoover starting as my only thing to say to that, because we could be in for a long afternoon. I think Chacho has to start on that side. I think he's made that right wing back
So,
his own now, surely. As much as I love Rodrigo Gomez, I don't want to see him up against Grealish. That's something I
yeah.
can get without seeing. Um, but yeah, Everton last season we drew 1-1 at home, if I'm not mistaken. Manetzi scored.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, they're a well drilled side, of course. David Moyes, traditionally a well drilled manager who traditionally has done quite well against Wolves as well, which is not something that bodes well for us. I remember at West Ham would often get a result against us. But it's a winnable game, and for me, even though it's only August, it's a do not lose just to get something on the board.
I agree.
We don't want another season where we're going out of August with 0 points. And then our first game in September is Newcastle away, which is an extremely hard game. They looked, despite the result, fantastic against Liverpool the other night.
You don't know who's going to be starting up top for them or us heading
Well,
into
we
the
know
last week
Jordan
of the
Strand
transfer
Larson
window.
will play that game. It's just in what shirt he's playing in is the
Yeah,
question. And honestly, they are a striker away from being fantastic as well, is what they showed against Liverpool.
yeah.
If Newcastle want to do a straight swap, Alexander Isak for Jorgen Strand Larsen, then the answer is no. But we carry we carry on into into Everton into Everton, a winnable game, but they will be well drilled and it will be difficult. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, obviously, we all know who Everton's danger men are. They've got Iliman Ndiaye, who's in terrific form, scoring the last goal at Goodison and the first goal at the, I can't even remember the name of the stadium. I
Hill
just know
Dickinson.
Hill Dickinson Stadium. Well, I really hope we get away tickets for that one, as I'm sure many Wolves fans will, just because I personally, I would like to be amongst the first batch of travelling fans going from the Wolves' perspective.
Yeah.
However, we're not here to talk about the away fixture. That'll be much later in the season. My personal prediction for Saturday, I'm going to be absolutely optimistic following this. Some might say deluded. I'm gonna I'm gonna be absolutely crazy, and I'm just gonna say 3-1 Wolves.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say Arias bags his first goal, Jorgen Strand Larsen gets one, and João Gomez pops up with one.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, realistically it won't. I honestly think Grealish will be tearing us on that one side. He looks a lot more confident, looks a lot more reminiscent of his Aston Villa days. And he looks a lot more confident without the pressure he had at City and
Yeah.
that £100 million price tag. Um, Realistically speaking, I think it will be a draw, but I'm going to be deluded following Wolves finally winning a match, and I'm going to say 3-1.
Yeah, I think my head says 1-1,
Yeah.
but my heart does say a 2-1 Wolves. I think we will get something. I don't see us keeping a clean sheet. I think we will concede at some point or another. Um, yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Wolves. That could very well come back to bite me, though, I do believe.
Hmm. Well, how do you think I feel? I think 3-1's definitely going to come back to bite me. I could easily see us equally losing 3-1, if I'm honest. However, hopefully our defence holds a lot more firm. Hopefully they're given a lot more confidence following this win. I definitely want to see Jose Sarr starting in goal again. Sam Johnstone does not know how to claim a cross. While I thought some of his shot stopping was all right, I think we're really suffering without having a man who can rush out to claim the cross. The defence looked particularly weak to that, in my opinion. I'd like to see Hugo Bueno and Tachachua start, like you said. I'd also like to see Santi Bueno start, if I'm honest, in that left centre back role.
Is
I
Tottenham
don't.
still suspended?
I'm pretty sure it was just the one game ban.
Yeah, it was.
So I think he's back. However, we have seen in the past Vitor does not like to put players straight in after receiving a red card, which I completely agree with. I don't think you should be able to get suspended and walk straight back into the team. I think it sends the wrong message to the players who worked hard in your absence, especially when they are getting the win in Totti's absence, in the case of this match just gone. Yerson Mosquera, what are your thoughts on him? I would like to see him stop, but I'm not sure if he's going to have the fitness. Doherty, obviously, always an incredibly reliable option. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't rush him just yet. I think showed a glimpse of something very good, but of course did play 90 minutes, which to me indicates the fact he won't play.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like Mosquera, always have, but he's a loose cannon as well. I'd probably keep the experienced head of Doherty in there for the time being. I don't think he's done anything wrong to get dropped either, so I'd probably keep Doherty in there personally.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think we'd all agree that João Gomez and Andre should be the starting midfield. However, I feel he will probably play Bellegarde.
I
Um,
think Manazzi might start in midfield this
I,
game.
I
I think
personally, I think he had an absolute horror show against Bournemouth.
I personally
He
support
works
this
very
as well.
hard, but I don't feel like he
Yeah.
should be starting
I
personally.
I want to just touch on Manexi before we get off. I think he was very harshly judged against Bournemouth. I actually thought I wouldn't say he's one of our better players, but I thought he was one of the more expansive players. He was our runner. He looked a lot better than players such as Arias, who struggled that game, and other players on that field. I think he was very unfairly judged, and I think the chance that he missed, yeah, he should probably get on target, but I don't think it's as bad as what people are quite making out. I think it's still quite a difficult finish from that angle. I think he's an easy scapegoat for Netsi because obviously he's not the most technically gifted of footballers, but he does work, and I think that some Wolves fans need to appreciate what he does and what he has done for us. He was pivotal for us in them 6 game winning streak last season, and
Yeah,
I don't think Wolves fans are being too soon to forget that.
I do feel like he is very harshly judged. Many people just claiming he only runs around, but that's kind of his whole job, and that is.
He plays like
And
that.
people don't realise how much space he opens up in both attack and midfield doing so. Um, we'll all just have to wait and see, though, ultimately, when it comes to how Wolves play and what the team selection's like ahead of Saturday. But I think that's all we have time for today. I'm glad to have hosted this week, and I'm even more glad if you're still listening. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been Cameron Gorman as your host, joined by Jacob Jones also. And from us at the South Bank Podcast, it is goodbye and see you next week.
Peace.
The voice of a new generation. This is KIC Radio.